Hey, welcome to the Making of an Exception podcast. My name's Kirk Graham, and today I'm so excited about this guest because it's been a long time coming.
Yep.
And I'll tell you why. Because when we started this podcast, he was one of the first people that I thought, man, people need to hear his story of not only what he built, but also his faith journey and where he's at today. And so our special guest today is Josh Arment, and he is a tattoo artist, owns the Aloha Monkey. Yo, thanks for being here today, man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, appreciate you being
glad
here.
that happened.
I've known you now the last, it's probably been 3 or 4 years, just being, doing some church stuff together, doing a little bit of life together as well. I haven't been tattooed by you, but it will happen one day, which is awesome. But tell me a little bit more about the Aloha Monkey, where it started, where you started tattooing, things like that. And then we'll shoot back to the beginning of your life too.
Sure. The Aloha Monkey, let's see. It was started by my mentor, Mike Malone.
Yep.
He went with Nom de Plume, like his pen name was Rollo Banks. And it's off an old Archie comic. But so
people know the name Mike Malone.
Yeah, in the tattoo community.
Yeah. So this dude's a legend.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I recognize it, but I'm not even in the community.
Yeah, he's like an innovator.
Got it.
And one of the first ones to really take the art form, him and Ed Hardy were like the ones to take the art from kind of like the gutters into the art world.
How did you meet these dudes?
Whoa, that's interesting. Mike Malone, being who he was, I learned about him. I was apprenticing in Chicago, outside Chicago in a town called Libertyville, Illinois.
Yeah.
And I was apprenticing there, and the woman that was instructing me in how to do this thing was Denise Wolf. She kind of turned me on to Mike Malone and Sailor Jerry. See, I went into the tattoo world thinking that I was just going to be doing my art and this, and I thought it was just an art expression. And it's like, really, it's got formulas and it's got things that work, just like, what you can do with an oil painting, you can't do with a watercolor painting and vice versa. It's its own medium.
Yeah.
And so I went in day one thinking I was going to do this wild stuff. And she's like, you might want to take a look at this. So she hands me a book. The book was called The Sailor Jerry American Tattoo Master. And I started reading it and I was like, wow, this is like rich history to this thing.
Yeah.
And through that book, I found out about Mike Malone because he was the keeper of the flame, basically. Like when Sailor Jerry passed away in '73, Mike Malone took the business over because Jerry's instructions to his wife were, when I pass, you either sell this building and all my stuff to Mike Malone or Ed Hardy, Zeke Owens, or Mike Malone, or you burn it.
Yep.
Because he didn't want
anybody else to get
it. And he trusted these dudes.
Yep.
So he trusted Ed Hardy. Ed Hardy was kind of the one that was like, had an art school background and was basically like, Jerry was inspired by what this dude knew about art. And he was a printmaker, so he already knew how to engrave things. So engraving skin was really, he was made for that.
That's what he was doing, yeah.
And so he and Mike Malone, so I found out about Mike Malone through that book, The American Tattoo Master.
People know Ed Hardy too. Like that name's got big because of the clothes that he started doing.
Oh, yeah.
But his clothing of his designs, all that. Yeah. So you know this guy.
I do know this guy. Those designs were like designs he had from the 70s and 80s that they just popularized. But yeah, I know him through Mike Malone. So how I met Mike Malone was there was a tattoo machine that I wanted, and he was the maker of this tattoo machine. Well, the guy that was selling it in the United States on the mainland, because Rollo or Mike Malone was in Hawaii, was just hard to get a hold of and was kind of blowing me off. And so me and my friend Keith, who I was working with, just got a hold of Mike. And so we got machines through a friend of ours, but we started a connection with Mike Malone. And so we just started basically pen paling, and Keith got in real good with him on building machines. And then when Rollo moved to the mainland in 99 or 98, we started connecting with him and making trips from the Chicagoland area up to Minnesota. Because I didn't know there was anything north of Milwaukee. You know what I mean? Being down an Illinois boy. And so, we started coming up here to see him. But him and Ed Hardy were basically the precursors of this tattoo movement that's out now.
Yeah. Are those guys from Minnesota? Is that
no? There's no connection.
So what were you coming to Minnesota for?
Mike Malone moved here. He fell in love.
Okay, so he ended up moving here.
Yep. He fell in love when he was in Hawaii. He fell in love with a Nordic woman.
Got it.
And she happened to be from this area, and so he didn't have really family, and so he was stuck on that rock of Hawaii for 26 years. He was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And so he came here.
Brought Aloha Monkey.
And he opened Aloha Monkey right at the convergent points of both 35s.
Yep.
Because 35 comes up from Texas.
E and W.
Yep. And does the split. And at that time, it was important to be in the phone books. And so you could kind of advertise in 2 phone books at the same time.
Yeah. No way.
So draw from the twin cities is what his idea was.
Genius. And so at what point did you take it over?
I took it over in the fall of 2001.
Got it.
And it opened in 99.
Got it. So now it's 20 years.
20 years.
Of the Aloha Monkey. You just transitioned building. Did you move buildings or renovated buildings?
No.
You bought a gas station?
Yep, and renovated the gas station.
That's awesome. It's in Burnsville, Minnesota.
And in the same parking lot as the original one.
Really?
Yeah, so I was in a strip mall.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then this is like one of those gas stations that's in front of a strip mall, kind of like, a Chick-fil-A is in front of the strip mall or something.
Yeah.
This is like the old gas stations that are in front of the strip mall. And I'd been looking at it for like 18 years. I mean, I wanted this thing.
Yeah.
And I already had dreams of what I was going to do with it 18 years ago. And I did everything I could do. I mean, I urinated on it. I wrote my name on it. I walked around it like it was the walls of Jericho. I did everything I could to try to possess it, and it just wasn't time. And 19 3/4 years later, God was like, I think it's time.
It's yours.
And truthfully, I probably couldn't have handled it at that time in my life,
Why is that?
Well, I mean, it was a big construction process, required a lot of teamwork that I don't think I had the skill set at the time to really put together, an overall maturity to be able to do something like that with integrity, his timing's always better than mine.
Yeah, and now you did it, man. You did it. It's going well.
I had a lot of help, and I did.
The grand opening was a few months back, or
no? We haven't had the full grand opening yet. That's going to be on April 27th.
Okay,
we're having like a big production.
Now,
yeah,
but there'll be a big deal.
Yep, we're having like taco trucks, and Sailor Jerry Rum's going to sponsor it, and Surly Beer, and
crazy.
It's gonna be fun.
So, who were you? What type of person were you when you started tattooing?
Oh man, I was a kid. I was like 19 years old. So I was just a kid that wanted to do tattoos. I had done 2 years of college, knew that wasn't the ticket for my art. They were pushing computers and graphics, and I wanted like the old Renaissance style apprenticeship in art,
Yeah.
Like, you follow your master, you duplicate what your master does, and through that repetition and duplication and emulation, you acquire a skill set.
Like apprenticeship.
Yeah, like a true apprenticeship. That's what I wanted out of art. That's what I read about in art history.
Yeah.
And that's not what they were selling at art school. And so I was like, I'm out.
Yeah. But you found that somewhere.
Yeah, I got an associate's degree, and then I found a woman that was willing to. I got a tattoo from her because in Illinois at the time you had to be 21 to get tattooed in the city of Chicago. Or no.
Really?
Yeah, it was Illinois. You had to be 21, the whole state. And so I got tattooed in Florida when I was younger than that, 18.
Yep.
And then I had this woman with parental consent. She would rework like what I had gotten.
And your parents were cool with it?
My mom actually found the lady. My mom's always been like my best friend, supporter. She's been rad.
Didn't you tell me she helped like change over your whole POS system and it's just she's in it.
Yeah, she's a backbone. She's like, 73 years old and still just my best friend and strong positive influence in my life.
That's crazy. Since I've known you, you've gone where'd you go? Ireland, or you've gone around the world.
Yeah.
Tattooing has taken you around the world.
For sure.
Which is crazy. And people that may not know your name or Aloha Monkey, they might know some of the people that have mentored you, that have poured into you, like in the tattooing community. Like Josh Arment, from what I can tell, even following online and your journey like over the last few years, like you're doing it. And it's awesome also that you have the Aloha Monkey. I didn't know all the rich history of the shop, really. Yeah. And so it's just cool, like tattooing community knows it, and follows it, and it's just crazy. And but so that's all tattooing. Talk about now your faith journey, and even how the way you were raised. So like before you gave your life to the Lord, before you you said his timing's always better. Before you started thinking that stuff, like what type of family life did you have? And then when was your first encounter with Jesus?
My family life's cool, man. My parents are awesome. They were, that revival in the 70s that happened.
Yeah.
They were part of that movement. They had some friends that started to invite them to a church that they met through Amway.
Yeah.
Network marketing.
Yep.
And so they
started
going
was
to
it like
a church.
Jesus People movement? I forget.
It was a big
something
movement.
like that.
Greg
Yeah.
Laurie talks about it all the time.
Yeah, okay.
About just that 70s revival
Yeah.
that happened. I wasn't around, so I don't know. I just know that that's how they connected with these people. And
Yeah.
so they started going to this church. And my mom's just kind of like, I always call her like my backwoods Buddha, because she's like, she was raised, kind of in central Illinois. Yeah, I mean, my mom had an outhouse when she was a little girl. It was like a poorer area.
Yeah.
Rural.
Yeah.
And she's just always got this like bizarre connection to deity and this wisdom. It's like, it's innate in her. Like, I was like, where did you learn this? I mean, she didn't have like a huge college education, study theology. She just knows things.
Yeah.
And so she raised me on the golden rule, and then I was going to a Baptist school because it was a better schooling system in my small community. But so they became believers in their late 30s or early 30s, and then had me. And then, I just grew up in a church school, like from preschool to like 5th grade.
And so growing up in that, like, was it something that always resonated with you, or you're like, man, I'm in, let's do this for life? Like,
no, not so much. In the beginning, it was like, there's the Baptist school and the public school and the Catholic school.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, we're putting you in a nicer school.
Yeah.
So you get to choose the Catholic school or the Baptist school. Well, all my friends were going to the Catholic school, and my mom was like, let's talk. So then my mom just had a real honest talk with me about it.
Yeah.
She's like, if you just look, you can choose and choose freely.
Yep.
But, choose what is right for you as far as what you resonate with the people. And so I just resonated with the people at the other school.
Yep.
It's funny because I could see my friends at the Catholic school is like across the highway or across the street. So you could see them in their playground, and I'm in my playground, and I'm meeting new friends and don't know anybody, and they got each other.
They got everybody.
It's crazy. But we played sports together and stuff, so we got to connect that way. But basically I gave my life to the Lord when I was like 5 or 6 in a Awanas program.
Yeah. Yeah, doing like midweek, like Wednesday night.
Wednesday nights, my mom worked. She always worked. She was entrepreneurial. She developed her schedule so she could pick me up and drop me off at school and all that. So she reupholstered couches and did interior decorating and painted and wallpapered.
So art is like, she's an artist.
She is creative, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have brothers and sisters? I've never asked you that before.
Step.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
My parents got divorced eventually, and both remarried. Funny thing about that is they're like best friends still to this day, though. It's
Your
like
mom and dad?
Oh, they talk to each other more than I talk to both of them combined.
Crazy.
Yeah, they live like 6 blocks away from each other in a retirement community down in Florida.
How does that work?
Because they're just adults, and
they're adults. Yeah.
They did it with freedom and ease.
Yeah.
While having love and affinity present for each other and the whole time.
Interesting.
That whole story is interesting because it takes both of them to get that result of that friendship and that depth.
Yep.
And both their new partners totally accept that they're that close.
Yeah.
And it's really just like love. So you asked me about my family life. I was always brought up around extreme love and extreme support.
Yeah.
And when I was in the church school, as I was getting older, there was just a bunch of things that were contrary to that. What I experienced at home with love and freedom and like freedom of mind, not like freedom like go out and be crazy. No, there was always structure, but it was like
but not intimidating.
Open-mindedness.
Yeah.
My mom and dad were both like that, or are both like that still. What I was running up to against in the school system is just like weird indoctrinations. I mean, it was a Baptist school, so your hair couldn't touch your collar. I remember one day I went in there with an Adidas pullover, almost nylon like what you're wearing.
Yeah.
And they're like, you can't wear that. And I'm like, my mom said I'm cold. Like, if I'm cold, I can wear
Did
it.
they have like uniforms? Or they,
No, it was
like,
just like you had to wear like nice stuff.
Got
like
it.
slacks or a button up or something, but no uniforms.
Yeah.
And they were like, you can't wear that. It says a word on it. And I was like, yeah, but I'm like cold. And my mom said, if you're cold, wear your sweatshirt. And so I was like, I'm not taking it off. And they duct taped it. And I'm like, oh, they duct taped it. Interesting. But they didn't just duct tape it, like put a duct tape piece over the Adidas.
Oh, they threw a cross on you.
No, they put it around me. So I couldn't even take my sweatshirt off.
No way.
At recess, I'm like hot now. Can't take my sweatshirt off because I got duct tape around my torso. So when my mom picked me up from school, she was like,
We're not
and
doing
she
this.
just like puts out a Virginia Slim cigarette, stomps in there in her mini skirt. And
We're not
she
doing
just
this.
is like, no. And so I was like, wow, that's so contrary. Like my mom is love. And then there's this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just started to question things. And I still like was getting fed at school, I really liked Awanas better, but I was getting fed at Awanas and then I was getting fed at home. And I just had these different meals being served to me and I could see what I liked and what I wanted to spit up.
Yeah. Yo, that's crazy. What's the journey been like? I know your baptism story, which is crazy. Like it's amazing. Between being 5 years old and kind of growing up and getting those different meals, figuring out who you want to be and in following the Lord, between that and then your baptism, what was that journey like? Because you obviously got to a point where you're like, if I remember right, you were like, I don't want anything to do with this. But then you're like.
Yeah, so 5th grade, I wanted a spiked haircut.
Yeah.
And I knew you couldn't have one at the school I was at. So my mom was like, all right, this is a transition time between middle school. You can do whatever you want, you know? I was like, I want that spiked haircut. So it's funny, like my 6th grade picture is like, or no, my 5th grade picture is like, I got a spiked haircut and I'm stoked, right? Because I had this like butt cut thing happening, you know, for the school. So I'm at a public school and I get a spiked haircut. Well, at a public school, I remember specifically in 5th grade that I was like, Mr. Holy Cross. This is so weird, just my...
No, it's all good.
Like this guy's name's Mr. Holy Cross, right?
Like his legit name?
Legit name.
No.
5th grade, he's like, he goes, so like this dude, my homie Ryan was like kind of a bad kid. I think it took him a couple passes to get out of 5th grade. Yeah. Because he was like older and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, he had like armpit hair and he was like older. And this dude was like, Mr. Holy Cross was like, listen, Josh, you're like really good at this. Yeah. School was just easy for me. I don't know. Something was just easy about it.
Yeah.
And so, and I had good support at home. Like my mother was very good about like helping me filter learning. So it's like easy to grasp.
Yeah.
So he's like, this guy struggles.
Yep.
You know, I'm going to set you next to him and I just ask you to help him get through 5th grade, basically. And so I was like, all right. And I remember specifically, I mean, this kid was a nutcase. He would just ride he would skip school and then ride his mini bike through the pickleball courts. We're in school. Like, you're supposed to be here. Yeah. And he's just like,
skipping school,
And skipping school. Yeah. And showing you that he's skipping school. I mean, he was a total hood. It was hilarious. But I remember specifically like helping him get through school, and we had a little pact, and, you know, I wouldn't like let him cheat on the answers, but I would help him get stuff. But with all this hanging out, I remember specifically the day that I chose like, oh, I'm going to choose being cool over being good, or being good, like, I don't know, what the world would say would be good. I was just me. But I remember choosing cool.
Yeah.
Rather than authentic, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was always smaller in stature. I, you know, developed late and all that. So, and this dude was like what I thought was a man. So I was like, oh, I'm going to hang out with cool.
Yeah.
Rather than be like true to self.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I remember that. And then skateboarding came into it. And I wasn't ever really into sports. I didn't connect there, you know?
Yep.
I mean, I played sports, but I wasn't like stoked about them.
Yeah. How'd you get to the point?
Things.
How'd you get to the point of like? So yeah, you remember that first fork in the road of like, now I'm choosing cool.
Yeah. So then I chose cool.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah. How long?
Like until 2010.
Yeah. So from 5th grade
till 2010, I chose cool. And basically it was like skateboarding, punk rock, hip hop,
Yeah.
rebellion, drugs.
Yeah. You're not saying skateboarding or hip hop is evil. You're
No,
just saying
they're great.
like cultural stuff. Like you just
No,
kept
I was
going
choosing
into it.
things that were cool over things that were true to self.
Yeah.
So, I'm not good at sports. So, skipping school and hanging out, smoking cigarettes is cool. So I'll do that.
Yeah.
Or, the sports thing, like I liked competition, but I didn't like how serious people got about it. It's like called a game, right?
Yeah.
Like,
we're just having fun.
Did anybody realize it's still called a game?
Yeah.
And so I was like the game guy, and they're all like the serious, like this is the Super Bowl stuff, and I'm not into it.
Yes.
So I chose smoking cigarettes or, hanging out with girls or,
Yeah.
doing mild drugs or whatever. Drinking early, stealing garage can beers and like going behind the dumpsters. That was like what I was into.
So those years, obviously, doing it. My journey, like through high school, I raised in a Christian home, and but through high school, basically the same thing. It's not that I didn't believe what I was raised in, or didn't believe God was real. But I definitely chose time and time again, especially those 4 years of high school. I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm cool. I'm just gonna do my own thing. For me, that brought there's a level of adrenaline and fun and excitement, but also a whole bunch of pain and emptiness and shame, because I loved my parents, but I hated lying, things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we have the same story.
Very similar.
But for you, from 5th grade to 2010, what was the downside to choosing cool?
Oh man, there's a lot. Let me back up a little bit. So the rebellious adrenaline and all that, I totally am right there with you.
Yeah.
And I never lost, I knew there was a God and I believed in Jesus, but was I going to talk about it? No, that's ostracism.
Yeah.
You're not in the cool club now.
Yeah.
So my faith never changed, but I started to question heavily, the people that were selling that.
Yeah.
I was like, the dichotomy is so bizarre. I mean, I told you about the guy that told me there was no animals in heaven.
Yeah.
So now I'm in middle school. This dude's telling me that there's no animals in heaven. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it wasn't until I was 38 years old reading Revelation where I see Jesus coming in on a white horse. And I wanted to contact this dude and be like, bro, there is one.
You got to let it go, man.
I know. But that's what I'm saying. I was like, whoa.
No, he comes in on a white horse. You're right, man.
So anyway, that's where my separation was happening. My faith wasn't in question. It was who's telling this?
Yeah.
And so I ran on that end, and the pain of choosing cool was, shame, because you're doing stuff, against your family or against yourself mostly.
Yeah.
Sleeping around, that was a big one for me.
Yeah.
And, I remember specifically my mother telling me when this does this, there's a spiritual connection.
Yeah,
and it's chemical, and I can't describe it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my 30s that I figured that out either.
Yeah.
I should have just listened to her.
Yeah.
So, there's pain. There was, depression. There was separation, man, from even family,
Yeah.
I went real inward.
Yep.
And that's dark in there.
A lot of what you're describing is what, as I've grown up, the difference between a true relationship with Jesus and religion. So, and that's kind of a classic. It's almost a cliche now. So people listening, if they heard that before, it's oh yeah, it's class. But it really is that. It's when Jesus came, all these dudes that were serving God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they're trying to follow all the rules. They had added all their own rules to it, but also kind of broke the rules when they and it's kind of how you have grace for people that have your same issue but a different issue. If they have a different issue, it's you don't have grace for them. Right, you know what I'm saying? Almost to that person who's dealing with something different than you deal with. you almost present yourself as perfect, and that's religion. That's like, but if they're dealing with the same thing, like you're like, hey man, I get it. I'm with you, man. Like so it's just crazy. Like we're all broken. Nobody's perfect. We won't make it there till we get to heaven, you know, like, so it's the anticipation of that. But everything that you're describing is the way that you're raised and then what your experience with the people selling it. Yeah. And not selling it, but just, you know, kind of teaching it to the next generation. It was some religion stuff, like the hair to the shoulders and the no graphics, all that. I mean,
I never read
the
that.
church. No, like, totally. Yeah. Where is it in the Bible? Right. All that. And not to dishonor, like even in my world, not to dishonor people that went before me, you know, people doing the best they can. Maybe some of it was bad intentions or not the, you know, some of it's messed up. Yeah. Some of it's messed up. We're all trying to make it, but like it used to be back in the day, like you couldn't dance, you couldn't go to movies, you couldn't tattoos. Like we can't even get, your whole body's tatted, you know? There's no way you're a Christian, you know? Yeah. Like, and your story makes even today a lot of Christians uncomfortable. Sure. You know, the way you talk, and some of the story, you know, even when you throw in like her Virginia Slims and minis, like there's a you're passionate about the things of the Lord, but also there's a roughness to you and your language that makes people professional Christians that have been Christians decades and decades and decades, who haven't talked to a lost person for a long time, that haven't, you know what I'm saying? Like you can make people uncomfortable. You know that about yourself. Sure. But you're so secure in who you are. I'm kind of ranting now, but that was the biggest thing. Like when I met you, that I appreciated about you so much, because you're the first person to say, like, listen, I don't have it all figured out. I'm not perfect, but I love the Lord, and it's like, and I remember we were in a life group together, like a Thursday morning deal, and you're like telling stories, and you probably know more Bible than you have to do around the circle, but then you also like cussed. And I was like, geez, this guy, like, you know, and so, but again, I don't think you're saying like, yeah, I'm super proud of everything, like, but there's like a freedom to you that's like, that makes professional Christians uncomfortable. And I say professional, like, I get it. And so I appreciate that freedom in you. I appreciate your drive to be better, to know, you know, to make a bigger difference. And I've got more stories coming down the line, but before we go there, tell us about the moment you, like the baptism story, because you went on a trip with your mom, you went on a trip with your dad, but how did you make that decision to say, man, I want nothing to do with this, to now I'm back in?
That's awesome. Thank you for that, because I just love hearing you talk about some of those stories, because we had some good Bible studies with that. I've always said, if I'm religious, hang me. You know what I mean? I want relationship, not religion. Yeah. So that's what I've always pursued. And, you know, that's where I think it is like you're called, because I didn't really ask for it. It's just like I was called into this. Yeah. And so stay true to yourself is kind of something that just keeps going on, not to your flesh, like stay true to your flesh. But
not your feelings. Yeah. But who God created you to be.
Exactly. And that's what I'm still trying to figure out. Like, I ran from who he created me to be, which was whole, perfect, and complete, all of us just the way that we are. Yeah. And I tried to create myself. Yep. And I was missing the creation part. Yep. Yes, we are made in the image of our Creator, and his intention is for us to create ourselves newly daily. Yep. Fall asleep to death, wake up to the sun rising.
Die to yourself every day. Yeah. Yeah.
And that I just missed that piece for like 25 years. Yeah. So the baptism story is interesting. It was 2009 Christmas, and my parents are divorced. We always spend Christmas together as a family, though. So like the steps are there, and the parents.
Your parents are divorced, but they're best friends. It's the weirdest story I've ever heard.
It is so cool, and not weird like swingers.
Yeah.
Like
No.
So they're at Christmas, and I was just thinking, man, I was like, I wasn't in a, like, I'm not married, I don't have kids, and I was like, you know, where is a place that they would want to go like a trip, because I'm like traveling the world and I always come back and I bring them something, I tell them about it. But like, I'm never asked, where do they want to go? Where's a place that they've never been that they were like, I'll never make it there.
Yeah.
So that Christmas, I gave them each a gift certificate separately for 1 2-week trip anytime in the year 2010, where they pick 4 places, I pick 4 places, and we agree upon one, like a bucket list trip.
Yep.
And so they were like flattered. It was awesome. We all cried. It was cool. And then
you had to do both these trips in 2010.
You had to. So I knew I was going on 2 killer trips in 2010.
Yeah, nice.
And so I'm thinking, they're going to pick 4 places and we're going to have like a discussion on this. So my mom calls me like January 6th.
Yep.
I mean, like right away.
Yeah, like a week after Christmas.
She's like, we're going to Rio. And I'm like, Rio de Janeiro. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, Mom, do you have any other options? Like, what else are we thinking here? And she's like, no, I want to go to Rio. I was like, Mom, it was like you pick 4, I pick 4, we meet in the middle. And she's like, nope, that's just where I want to go. And I'm like, why there? And she's like, I just want to do some work in the favelas. My mom's got like early onset COPD.
Yeah.
At 65, she wants to go into the favelas, like the slums. And I was like, Mom, you got to watch this movie. It's called City of God. If you watch that movie and you still want to go, then I'll take you. And so she calls me like a night later and she's like, yep, I watched it. Larry couldn't watch it, my stepdad.
Yep.
And he thought I was crazy because I want to go. I was like, all right, Mom, we'll go. So we booked this trip. It's February that we're going. And 2010, February, on Valentine's Day, I got left by a bunch of guys that were working for me.
Yep.
And so like 4 of my 5-guy crew split. And it was kind of, it was the best thing that ever happened, but it was also kind of mutiny. It was like on Valentine's Day, the Valentine's Day Massacre guys they had like planned it for a year and they were letting me know on Valentine's Day. And so I remember in that moment, like I'm in my tattoo chair and I'm working on a customer and they tell me what they tell me. And then I'm like, is that it? And they're like, yep. I'm like, all right, cool. You have till Friday and then we'll clean it out. And I remember just kind of like having nothing of mine, like that I created.
Yeah.
Like I was no longer in control. And I just remember looking up and I like had Jesus picture up. And I remember the view. I don't remember everything that was said, but I remember the view and I was like, what else? Like, I got nothing. What do you got, God?
Yeah.
Because the whole time that I was rebelling, I was still praying, not consistently, not reading scripture, but I was still in relationship. I was just in a different town.
Yeah. Long
like
distance.
pen pals, right? Long distance relationship. And so I just remember like, what do you got? Like, I don't have anything. Hopefully you got something. And so I called a friend of mine, a great friend named Nick Colella, and he helped me basically keep the shop running while I was on this trip. Because the very next week I was going to Rio.
Yeah.
And so he came up, left his shop, and ran my shop for 2 weeks while I was on vacation with my mom. And I remember telling my mom, I don't want this to be a churchy trip. And my mom wasn't like a missionary or anything, but I was this can't be a churchy trip. And she's like, no, it's not. We're just going, it's part of this group.
It better not be a missions deal.
Right. She was in network marketing, and one of the things it was on this, it was called Monte. It was this acai berry, and the acai berry comes from Brazil.
Yeah.
And so they give back to the one of the guys that's like the of that program.
Yep.
Gives back to the community. And he used to be in the favelas.
Yep.
And so I'm like, don't make it a churchy trip. She's like, it's not. I go, all right. So we go and we meet in this airport in like Miami or Atlanta or something to then fly to Brazil. And the first guy that I meet, that she's been pen paling with these people that are on this like networking.
Ready to do it.
And he comes up to me, and this dude has a Mona V shirt on and like a Bible in his hand. And I was like, no, it is. She totally tricked me.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, defense is up, right? Kind of being a sourpuss about the whole thing. And I get down to Brazil, and the person that's hosting us, his name is Sergio. And Sergio was like a Federale's son. Yep. And he had access to the favelas because he would take the cocaine from the Federale police station and redistribute it because his dad was the cop. and he would redistribute it to the favelas. Well, change that around by 30 years, and now he has access to the same people in the same favelas of Niterói, Brazil, but he's going in and he's sharing Jesus.
No way.
And it's insane.
Yeah.
So I meet this guy, Sergio, and instantly I connect with this guy. This guy's Brazilian. He's love.
But you don't know he's about Jesus yet.
No.
Yeah. So you like love this dude.
I love him right away. And his family, he's got a tight family. He's very expressed. He like hugs, and he's not restricted in any way.
Yeah.
And then I find out that he's like totally passionate about the Lord. And during that trip, there's a ton of crazy experiences. I mean, one night my mom's like, listen to the fireworks. I'm like, Mom, that is heavy gunfire. That is totally not fireworks. You know?
Your mom's like pumped.
She loves this
pumped
thing.
To be there. Yeah.
And we're like walking in the favelas and just seeing that, man. It's like,
listen to the fireworks.
It's crazy.
It's the funniest thing I've ever heard.
It's crazy. So yeah, I get to meet Sergio, and Sergio and his son gave me a little pocket New Testament in English.
Yep.
And I had nothing to do. I mean, you're not in America anymore, so I don't have like cell phone access. So I just started reading Acts. And that's where I started.
Yo, it's crazy you picked Acts, man.
He recommended I check something of Acts or Romans out. He's like, there's this thing called the Roman Walk. You could check that out. And I was like, I don't know. I chose Acts. And so Acts, and then I went into Romans, and that was my 2 weeks in Brazil. Now, one of the interesting parts about that is he and his mother. So his mother, Cecilia, created a house for women. Now, the Federale cop dad, like had a retirement and a pension, right? And he thought he was going to retire out, a little more rural. And so they did. And they were going to build a place, and they did. But they happened to build it for like a bunch of homeless women that were raising children. And so his entire pension and the thing that she started is like now they've got hundreds of women. He gave it all away. And they have hundreds of women that have gone through this program where she basically helps them not just get back on their feet, like learn to live and raise a kid. And she has all these women around. Well, Sergio and his dad built a church there. And this church is made of timber and has like palm leaves on the thatch roof. And I'm telling you, I've been to Notre Dame Cathedral, but there was more spirit in that church than in any cathedral I've ever stepped in.
Yeah.
And everybody's speaking in Brazilian, and she's leading the sermon. And during the sermon, and I'm like hesitant on all this.
Yeah.
And she's leading this sermon.
You were cool with Sergio,
and
but all of a sudden,
not cool with the rest.
Yeah.
And so...
Okay, so you were not cool with the rest, but you sense spirit in that church.
I sensed it immediately.
It's just like confronting you.
Like
in a good way. Or in a bad way.
No, it was like, I'll explain when it got good, but at first it was super resistant.
Yeah.
Now in hindsight, I know that most things that are resistant are like, that's good, you should go that way.
Yeah.
Like, the obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
Well, she starts speaking, and I go through the service, and it's in Portuguese. I can't figure out what she's saying, but I'm sitting next to her grandson, Sergio's son, and she's looking straight at me, and she starts saying something, and I start sobbing, like pouring.
She's speaking in Portuguese.
Yeah. And I'm sobbing like a child. And I can't even like breathe. And so as soon as I get it together and she's like finishing the sermon over there, I ask him, I'm like, yo, what did she just say? He's like, I couldn't get it all, but we'll ask her afterwards. And I was like, I need to know now. I need to know now. You have to tell me what just happened. And he's like, we'll talk to her later. And so after the sermon, we went straight up to her, and she basically, he translated what she was saying. And she said, there's power in you, and there's something special that's going to happen in your life. Wow.
There is.
So at that moment, things shifted a little bit.
Yeah.
For the better.
Yeah.
And right then it was like the spirit that was so resistant was like so flat.
Now you wanted it.
Yeah. So I started feeding.
Yeah.
And there wasn't like a big like prayer moment or like repentance thing. It was like a real surrender.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it was like a wave. It was hitting you.
I mean, I just got left by everybody. That's a surrender.
Yep.
Didn't get my way in, is this going to be a churchy thing? And it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was a God thing. It wasn't a churchy thing.
Yeah.
That was surrender. And then being here, I mean, there was so much surrender that was happening. So then every night I'm like reading Acts and I'm reading Romans and I'm talking to Sergio and I'm watching how he lives his life. And he doesn't live it squeaky clean. I mean, like, I'm a Puritan. Look at me. Yeah. He doesn't care if it looks good, it doesn't look bad. Yeah. He is going into favelas, bringing God.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. Yes.
And so we went in with him. And this was like, we started going into these favelas and bringing the word in there. And these people are so loving and they have nothing. And I'm coming from a community of people that had everything and they weren't loving.
Yeah.
Not my home life, but like society around me.
Yes.
These people are in love. Yep. Some of them had never even gotten to the Christ Redeemer. And it's like across a bridge.
Yeah.
And they've never been there. And they have more faith. And they have nothing.
Yeah.
And I was like,
they've never even seen the statue.
No. And we're going there to like tourist it, you know?
Yeah.
So then we start bringing these kids with us. And the kids melted me. I mean, playing soccer with them. Kicking it with them. And just watching how Sergio acted with these kids. And so, the experience was intense. I mean, when we would go into the favelas, we had to leave our passports back at the place, and we couldn't bring any money or anything. Yep. And so I smelled this, like, sweet bread. I was like, and you had to be in line, you know, because he was, like, somebody at the front, somebody at the back. Because it was dangerous. Yeah. So I smelled this, like, sweet bread, and I, like, walked off for a minute. I, like, just walked out of the line. Like, what is that? I got to find that.
Yeah.
And this little kid like came up to me with basketball shorts on and he couldn't have been more than 10 years old. And he's like screaming at me and I'm like, all right, dude, you know, thinking that it's like he's just playful. Then he pulls his shirt up and he's got a full-blown automatic weapon on his hip. And I just froze. I didn't know what was going on. And he's just like showing me that he has the weapon and like kind of like
giving you attitude.
Lots. And so finally, Sergio's other like sidekick that like works with the church and everything came over and he was like, yo, and he like downplayed the kid and like cooled the kid down. And I asked him, I was like, what happened to that? And he's like, dude, he was intimidated. And he was telling you that he was more of a man than you were with all those tattoos and stuff.
No way.
And he was just like punking me.
Wow.
With a full-blown automatic weapon.
Wow.
It was nuts.
How old do you think he was?
Maybe 10.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That was crazy. So yeah, then, you know.
So that's the trip your mom wanted to do.
Yeah. So we get back from that trip. My dad's like, your mom had such a great time. I'm like, yeah, please pick 4 places. I'll pick 4 places and we'll go somewhere.
Yeah.
Dad says we're going to Rio.
Same spot.
I'm like, what? You're kidding me.
Dude, this story, the first time I heard you share it, dude, I was laughing so hard. That is the funniest thing. So your dad hears about your mom's trip, and they're divorced.
Yeah.
Your dad hears about your mom's trip. She loved it. And he's like, I don't care. Anywhere in the world, I'm going to the same spot.
Yep. So I was thinking Tibet. I was thinking Bhutan. I thought maybe he wanted to go back to Vietnam. He says Rio. So
how many months later?
Now it's like September, October. We're back in Rio. And the first trip, Sergio wanted me to tattoo him. And I'm like, so he goes into the favelas and he brings me like tat rigs. And I'm like, Sergio, I can't use this, bro. I mean, we don't even know where this ink's been. Oh, this is like, you don't want this.
Yeah.
I'll bring my own stuff sometime in life. I didn't know I was going to be back there the same year.
Yeah.
So I get back there and...
so you brought your stuff?
I brought a couple things.
Yeah.
And so he wanted a portrait of both of his kids on his inner arm. So now I'm thinking, man, I got to do this portrait, blah, blah, blah. So we got all the reference. I come down with the stencils prepared because that would be too difficult down there. And so, yeah, we're down there and one of the days we tattoo a portrait of both his kids on his arms with their names outside the favelas in our little camp where we were staying, but still it wasn't like luxurious. I mean, it was like tattooing in a hotel room.
Yeah, did you say you were like hooked up to car batteries or something?
It was, pretty gnarly. And then there was like other like people that worked there, like younger people that maybe couldn't afford tattoos. So I did like a lot of names on just like random people. Like no carding. I don't know how old you are. Yeah. Names.
Just holding out. Holding your arms out. No way.
And they were so stoked. I mean, this is like a huge treat for them.
Yeah.
So I'm just tattooing all these kids. And I mean, some of them were definitely not old enough in American standards to get tattooed. But Sergio and I just started bonding, and his son and his whole family. And then I was like, I want to go back to that church.
Yep.
See your mom speak again. And so we went back, and the night before I just had something weighing on me. And so I asked him, I was like, hey man, tomorrow could I get baptized? And he's like, yeah. So they had a pool there, just like their pool.
Yeah.
And then this church of palm leaves.
Yep.
And so he's like, yeah, we'll totally do it. And I was like, what a perfect time. It's like my dad's here, so my earthly father can give me to my spiritual father, and I want you to do it. And he's like, I'd be honored. So we do another service.
Yep.
I've had a lot of time in the Word. I started devouring the Bible when I came back to America.
So for those months between the trips, you're just reading
on my own.
Yep.
Any information I could get. I started listening to K-Wave radio in California. One of my California homies turned me on to that. Started getting fed from Greg Laurie, Andy Stanley.
Yep.
Just hitters that really got the Word in a way that I could resonate with it.
Yeah.
And it was like not indoctrinated. It was like the Word.
Yep. Yep.
And how it applies to life. So anyway, I'm devouring all that. I'm eating all different foods with that, and get down to Brazil, doing this thing with my dad. We planned it a little different. We were going to do the favela thing, and then we were going to kick it over at Iguazu Falls. So I was going to take my dad on like an actual little couple-day vacation where we could relax. So we did make it out to Iguazu. That was cool. But during this period there with my dad and going to this church again and being with Cecilia and being with Sergio, I just knew it was time for me to get baptized. I had never done it when I was a kid. I thought it was weird. It was a Baptist school I went to. And you know how long Baptist sermons are. Dude, a Baptist baptism is like, I thought they would forget to pull me back up out of the water. I mean, these are little kid fears. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just going to take too long.
No, you didn't know.
Right. And so I was like, it's kind of weird, and you're in there in your clothes and you look like a weird angel, and I didn't like all that. So I never would like say yes when I was a little kid. I said yes to Jesus, but I didn't say yes
to baptism.
To that.
So you knew you still like hadn't done it. It's something I think I should do. And so this is the moment.
Yeah. And it was just instantly I knew that I wanted to do it. And so Sergio baptized me in a pool, and my dad was in the pool with us, and that was amazing. And then all these people around me were speaking Portuguese, and it was so amazing. The emotion that I felt, and like there's no English anywhere, but it was like full blown acceptance, and people were moved and crying, and I don't know, they were strangers, but I mean, it was deep.
Yeah. They were strangers, but they're family.
Yeah. Just showed you we're all connected, man.
Yep.
So came home from that trip, and I have a good mentor, Tom Wahlberg. He's an important man in my life.
Yep.
Kind of a financial mentor is how it started. But I started going to Open Door with him. Yeah. And that was my back in church moment.
Yep. So after that, which the stories you just shared are just epic. But so after that, coming back 2010 to where we're at now, what have the last few years been like for you? Faith journey, but also a tattoo shop, like just business stuff. Like your life's been blessed. You're living a blessed life. You told me like house was paid off. You bought the gas station. You've been able to, you took your parents on a trip anywhere. Like that stuff's crazy. Like God's been all over blessing your life. But the last 9 years now.
So let's talk about that. 2010, the business through 2010 and 2011, you have to understand I had a successful business that needed to operate, and my friend Nick was gracious enough, my friends Nick and Eric were gracious enough to come and run my shop for 2 weeks, but they couldn't stay.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't just, I mean, there's not a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of talent out there, but it's not like if you owned a Jimmy John's, you can just hire anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you have to find the right people, especially with the standards that I hold around tattooing. So 2010, this is where the Lord was totally blessing me. I didn't have a permanent crew except for one guy.
Yep.
And I operated with a 3-man crew plus me every week for 18 months.
Yep.
And so what that looked like was I would pick up a guest artist. So somebody would fly in from different parts of the country and then even from across the sea. And every week I would pick up 2 guest artists. And so I'd be like dropping off and picking one up and dropping off and picking one up every Tuesday. And so I operated like that and putting them up at my house, and then they would work, and the next guy would come in the next week for 18 months.
Crazy.
Which was awesome, and it was a blessing from God, and it drove me to excess. Like I got into drinking too much and socializing, because you want to show these people a good time. They're doing you a huge solid.
Yeah.
And so then that just got me into just overconsumption.
Yeah.
And I was still, you know, on my faith walk, but now I had like this duality. It was like the duality was back, and it was more subtle this time.
Yeah.
And so, 2010, 11 was a rough time for that, and a blessing from God for the other. And it was just the thorn in my side at that time.
Yo, that's crazy, because after like a huge spiritual experience, you know, 2010, those trips with your parents, it's crazy that, and it's not really a surprise, like even reading the Bible stories that happen, like after big time victory comes like big time attack, you know?
Oh yeah. The war got serious.
Yeah.
When I got baptized, the war got real.
Yeah.
In my
What's
life.
crazy is you read the account of Jesus being baptized. Immediately after that baptism, he's led by the Holy Spirit into the wilderness where he didn't eat for 40 days and he was tempted by the devil.
Yeah.
Like, so you just think about like the parallels of Jesus was baptized and then he did 40 days of being tempted by the devil, which is crazy.
Of war.
Yeah. And so your baptism leads into greater spiritual attack, 2010, 2011.
Big time. And so that was a blessing that the business survived and flourished, and I started to hire people, and it started to grow.
Yep.
And while I was kind of wasting away, like in myself, I still had open door. I still was getting fed, and I was just realizing that there was a gap, and I didn't see it at the time. It was like a thing I didn't know I didn't even know.
Yeah.
But the gap was in my authenticity. I wasn't being authentic to myself. I was being something for someone because they were doing me a solid. So I was being the socialite, or I was being the party goer because I want them to have a good time. I was considering their considerations. I wasn't considering staying true to myself. And so it took me years to come back to that and go, the gap was your inauthenticity. Yep. You weren't being the authentic, perfect, whole, complete version that God made you to be. I was being what was needed at the time.
For somebody else.
Right. And then that just wasn't me. So it took me a couple years to find that. And then there's like freedom in that.
Yeah. So after you find that freedom, even more recent years, like I've known you since coming to River Valley and being in different Bible studies, things like that. But yeah, like the last couple years to where you're at right now.
Yeah. Well, I originally went to River Valley because I found out from my friend Eric that.
Shout out to Eric Bell.
Yeah, Eric Bell, what's up?
Which all the time he'll show me like, yo, check out this tat, and then he lifts up his shorts, like it's like, bro, like put your pant leg down.
He's got awesome tattoos of God and like sacred geometry and stuff.
Yeah,
I met him on an airplane on the tarmac.
No way.
In Atlanta, we were both on layovers in Atlanta. And I was reading a Christian men's book. He was reading a Christian men's book. And I looked over at him and we just started talking. Then I didn't hear from him for like 3 years or something, and then he hit me up for a tattoo, and we've been best friends since.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
He's awesome.
I love Eric.
So we're down on Nicollet eating one night, and it was a Saturday night, and I was like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to church. There's this new church. You got to check it out. It's at the Poorhouse." I was thinking like poor, like pocket poor. I didn't know it was a poorhouse. It was a bar.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Dude, it's this bar. You got to see this thing." And I was like, "What?" Jesus would totally go to a bar.
Yeah.
You know, he might not go to the White Steeple building where everybody's puritanical, but he would totally walk in a bar. So I'm into this. Let me check it out.
Yeah.
So I went and checked it out, and you spoke.
Yeah.
And so it's this bar that they did super amazing where they cover all the liquor signs and everything. But behind Kurt is this Jägermeister symbol with a cross in the middle.
We hadn't covered it up.
And I loved
it. Yeah.
But I just loved that.
Yeah.
I loved the honesty of it. I loved that you guys were extremely passionate. I loved that I could instantly relate to you because the way you spoke, like the way you moved, the way that you were moved by the Spirit.
Yeah.
I was just like straight man crush. I was like, dude, I want to come back and hear this guy speak. I have to come back. And then the next time I came in, it was like on a video screen. I was like, wait a second, what happened to the guy?
What just happened? Yeah.
And so, I was always looking for the third week.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started going to River valley, and that's just one of the places I get fed from.
Yeah,
I like
totally. Yeah, and I think that's for a lot of people. It's like, maybe you have a church home, but you're like, it has to be beyond people, like just people feeding you, but you have to be in it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like even you sharing your life change, the baptism story, all that, like you had to start reading it for yourself. You had to start devouring it for yourself, you know? And there's people listening, like nothing's changed my life more than reading the Bible, like, which is crazy, because I've been raised up in it, you know? So, and a lot of things have changed my life, but nothing has changed my life more than me on my own reading the Bible.
Yeah.
And so you just can't get it. And so, I love that you said it. It's like River Valley, it's one of the places that you get fed, you know, but you got to be out there doing it. It's your relationship. It's not, hey, this is our relationship with God. Like, no, it's mine. It's me. It's you, which is awesome. Talk about, you know, and we'll wrap it up, but, go ahead.
No, I just, in that years of process, I went through this Unidos and Cristos experience. It's like 3 days, a short, basic like men's weekend. They do a women's weekend as well, but this community puts together this weekend of impact, and it's like a short course in Christian living, basically. And that sounds kind of lame, but it's like the first time I really saw grace.
Yeah.
And you stay in this church for like 3 days, but it was super moving. That's how I met Hank and some of my closest friends now. But basically, it changed my heart, and I got to see a new side of faith and a new side of community and a new side of brotherhood. And what it did was it inspired me to actually live it rather than like hide it. Like I would always hide it, and it's like that little light of yours, you know?
Yep.
I would like not let it shine.
Yep.
And so I started to live it, and I started to just, what would, like, not the tacky, what would Jesus do, but like, what would he really be in you? You know, he's like the mix master or the center. You know, you're downloading from God, you're grounded to here because this is where you're at. And when he's here, it's like he mixes that dichotomy.
Yeah.
And makes you what you are.
Yeah, and you tell stories about how now that's a lot of your conversations in your tattoo shop.
Oh, yeah.
Where you used to maybe be hiding it or like hope they wouldn't ask about it, or now you got stuff like on the walls and different things all over you, the art on you, like everything has a story and you're trying to talk about it.
Yeah, no, it's one of my favorite subjects. That's why I was stoked on doing this podcast. It's like, we want to talk about tattoos and Jesus?
Let's do it.
That's like my two favorite things. So, yeah, one of the things that I would do in the old tattoo shop days is like somebody would come in and they'd be like, yo, how much for that? And I'd be like, 100. And they'd be like, how much for that? I'd be like 50. And how much for that? That's 50. What's the cheapest thing you got in here? And I would be like, you are.
Yeah.
And then they would leave.
Yeah.
Because technically you are the cheapest thing in here.
You are. Yeah,
I mean, there's like a free sticker over there, but that was like my approach, right?
Yep.
Now I got this little area of some Bibles. It's like Hope for the Highway. It's like centered around motorcycling, but it's a New Testament copy.
Yep.
And I just keep them out there. And I mean, we've gone through cases of these things. And I've never seen somebody take one, but we're going through them.
But people
and so now I'm like, oh, the cheapest thing in here, got these free Bibles right here. You can take that.
Take it.
Grab some stickers.
Yes.
So yeah, it's something that I'm not ashamed of or bashful about.
Yeah. What? And we'll wrap up because I know you got a full life, but and one day I'll be in your shop, so we'll do it.
Hopefully the 27th for the party.
Yeah. Well, for sure, but I don't know if you're gonna be tattooing that day.
I will be.
All right. Because my wife, she was like, ask him. I know we're recording, but it's like separate. Anyways, talk about just what are you dreaming about for the next couple years? Tattoo shop, but also your personal life. Just anything that you're thinking about for your future.
All right. My future is it's looking pretty good. I keep an open mind, trying to die to ego and live from the heart, you know, and live authentically. But the most interesting thing actually brings up a little bit of a story. I'm in a great relationship. I got this amazing woman in my life as an influence in my life. Her name's Grace. I mean, that's crazy in itself, her name. Yeah. So, we plan on getting married, and that's going to be an excellent addition to my life because it's something I've always wanted.
Yeah, you hope you say that about your future wife. It's an excellent addition to your life.
Well, I just think it's a huge contribution. I mean, she's an amazing person.
I'm married, and my wife is a huge contribution.
I never thought I'd say that either. I mean, I was the guy that was like, no way. Yeah. And now I'm like, total change of heart. And that was an interesting thing. I was going to the next class back when it was at the poorhouse. Yeah. And I was driving there and having it out with God about like, can I just please find a woman that actually likes you? I just want her to like you. Yep. Because I'm not seeing that out here. Yep. And my Bluetooth connects, and so my phone connects to it. And at the time, I was listening to an Andy Stanley podcast called When Gracie Met Truthy. What? Talking about how Jesus comes as grace and truth. He doesn't come as just, like you and I, we can do grace and we can do truth, but we can rarely blend them accurately. Yeah. Yep. And he did. And so I'm going to this next class, and I'm like yelling at God, and I'm like, see, this comes up and it says Truthy met Gracie, and I hit pause because I don't want to listen to this right now. I'm having it out with him. Yep. And he's got to have a huge sense of humor. Just in that connection, it's awesome. For sure. Because this is what he does. I go into the next class, I'm late. There's no seats left. It's in that tiny little room up top. Oh, yeah. There's no seats left, and I'm like aggravated upon aggravated upon aggravated. And this woman stands up in the far corner, and she stands up, and she goes, oh, there's a seat over here. Why don't you sit by me? I go down to the end, sit down. She goes, what's your name? I go, Josh. What's yours? Gracie. And I just looked up. I was like, you are kidding me. I mean, it can't go that quick. Like but he's cracking up there. He has to be. Yeah, yeah. And so I was like, no way. And I mean, she's beautiful. Yep. So I was like, what? She goes, I'm like, you guys wanted us to write something down. I'm like, we don't have a pen. She goes, I'm a 5th grade school teacher. I have tons of pens. And so she opens her purse up, grab a pen. So we're sitting there, and I find out, or she asked me, she's like, what do you do for a living? I said, I know you're a 5th grade school teacher. I own a small business in Burnsville. She goes, oh, that's interesting. My uncle owns a small business in Burnsville. Oh, that's fantastic. She goes, what's the name of your business? I said, the Aloha Monkey. And she stops and she looks blasted, and she's like, oh my goodness, my uncle is Tim. He has the insurance place right next door to you. I'm like, Tim? No. Tim Otting? Like, I know that guy. I mean, like, I see him every day. She's like, yeah, that's my uncle. So then she starts cycling around the tattoo shop, and so I start getting to see her around the tattoo shop, and we end up serving on the same team at River Valley, which is the greeting team. And then, I mean, I know her for years, and we just see each other on greeting team, and then, and then she wanted to get a tattoo of this apple, and then I found out she was single finally, because I think I daringly tried to ask her out a couple times and she was seeing somebody. Yeah. But then she was single, and I asked her if she would go on a proper date with me, and she said yes. And I said, ooh, there's a caveat to that. She goes, what is it? I said, I'm actually on this like year of no sex, no dating, no nothing. And it ends November 2nd. Would you wait? And it was like 15 days or something, 20 days. And she's like, I'll totally wait. And
Yeah.
so on November 2nd,
Yeah.
we went on our first date.
No way.
And it's been awesome since.
And you're gonna, the dreams to get married.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And we know Gracie. We've known her for a long time, and she's awesome. And so we're stoked for you guys. And yeah, she's an amazing leader in our church in her own right. Like, she's awesome. So, and then for the business, anything you're thinking about for the business? You got the grand opening coming.
Yeah, grand opening coming. I'm just into creating a positive work environment where everybody is, lucrative in both, finances and like learning. I love helping people learn things. I love exposing people to new ideas. Just blessing for everyone around. I truly am like a stand that everyone that I come in contact with gets freed up.
Yeah. Yep.
In whatever it is.
It's awesome. 2 questions and then we're done.
Yeah.
Ready? Favorite book of all time?
The Count of Monte Cristo.
I've never read it.
It's a good book. Don't see the movie.
Okay. Doesn't do it justice?
No.
All right. The Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have a reason why that's your favorite?
If you read it, you'll get it.
Okay. Last question. One piece of advice that you'd give to somebody following in your footsteps.
In my footsteps.
Might be a young tattoo artist. Might be a young kid that just got told to cut his hair because it grew past his collar.
100% stay open-minded. Because once you put the top on, you can't get filled up with any kind of new information. So stay open-minded and be eager to learn. You know what I mean? I'm just like a huge sponge of information. So I like to sponge it up. And I think that by being open-minded and being a sponge of information, you can figure this place out a little bit.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yo, thanks so much
Thank you
for your time. Thanks for being here.
I had a great time.
I think the world of you, and I'm inspired by not just your journey, but the freedom that you have, yet the genuine heart and hunger to be more like Jesus, not to be more like religion, not to be more like some church, this thing, that thing, but to be more like Jesus, and you're not afraid to look at every angle, look at all the information, but it comes back to who is Jesus, and I'm trying to be like that, and that's what I see in you, that's what I pick up, and I appreciate that. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, brother.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, we'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. We've got new episodes releasing every single week. We'd also love to hear your questions or comments. You can comment below. You can also find us on Instagram at Exception Podcast. And I want to give a quick shout out to our producer, Tissel. My name's Kirk Graham, and we'll see you back next week.